Hello everyone and welcome to Trail Pass. The vehicle behind me is kind of a vehicle that's gotten some hate and some serious love. It's the 2021 Jeep Gladiator. Let's dive into it. So when the Jeep Gladiator entered the mid-size truck game, it definitely came with some waves. Now, it is the first time that Jeep has been in the mid-size truck game for a long time, but it's definitely different than any other mid-size truck. Here with this 5-foot bed, that is the only configuration, the full 4-door with the 5-foot bed. Now, the only other truck that I can think of that has this configuration is the Chevy SSR, which is arguably not a truck, and the Honda Ridgeline, which again, a lot of y'all like to point out is not a truck. But that is the only way this Jeep Gladiator comes. Now, is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. Definitely the majority of mid-size truck buyers and even your full-size truck buyers, your half tons, do get the 4-door with the short bed configuration. Definitely the most popular. Your average person is not hauling plywood on the weekends and is probably more interested in their family's comfort than they are about their payload. So here in the Jeep Gladiator, a lot of people like to point out that this is the most off-road capable mid-size truck on the market, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Now sure, you can have that Rubicon or Mojave trim, and new for 2021 you can get a Willys trim as well. But here this one is kind of a Sport S, kind of a mid trim level. Now inside you do still get your automatic locks and power windows, but it does not have leather. It's not a full Overland, but it does have these really nice painted aluminum wheels and Bridgestone dueler tires, which are somewhat of an AT tire. It says it right here, but I definitely wouldn't go on too many super technical trails or go in too deep of mud with these tires. So I think the question you might be asking yourself is this a real Jeep? And you can tell that right here because it does have a 7-slot grille, which Jeep seems to pride themselves on. Now, other things that make it a Jeep, obviously it has all sorts of Easter eggs and badging because Jeep is proud of their product. You can see right here, it actually says T50. That is actually the torque bit size that you need to remove the doors. The doors are removable. So that again bodes to it is a true Jeep. And also this one is a hardtop model, but it does have those freedom panels, and the rear of the roof can come off as well if you're willing to take enough time. Now, this is not your Jeep of the past. You can't just simply have a soft top, throw it over your shoulder at a red light. These do take a little bit more of an effort to get them topless and to get them doorless, but they are a lot more livable day to day as well. Now, front and rear, this vehicle does have solid axles. It is coil sprung up front and coil sprung in the rear, but the real news story here is that this rear end is actually a 5-link rear suspension, very similar to the Ram 1500. What this allows is actually more towing capability than any other midsize truck in its class, and ultimately a really nice ride. Now, one topic of debate here on these Gladiators is, again, that configuration. It's only available in the 4-door short bed. And I think a lot of people might think that this thing looks a little bit weird. And I'm not sure if it looks weird, but it definitely looks different than any other vehicle that you normally see. Now, the angle of that rear door, the reason that's like that is because that's actually the same rear door as on the 4-door JL. Simply, you'd slide that fender up to match that line, and that is the length of a 4-door JL. Now, obviously this one was added about a foot there, and also several inches there in the overhang. And does it look weird? Yeah, but I think that's only because it's a new vehicle. These haven't been out too long, and it's definitely something to get used to. Now, with this bed, it is only a 5-foot bed, but for your average mid-size truck buyer, you might be throwing some tools in here, maybe taking your trash to the dump. Most of you all are not hauling that much to where you need construction materials or anything like that loaded back here. And ultimately, for the size of this bed, I think it does really, really good here on a mid-size truck. So here on the Jeep Gladiator, you do have a backup camera, which is actually something new with the JLs. When they came out in 2018, it was with the federal mandate where every new vehicle had to have a backup camera, and this one is not immune to that. Now, you release the tailgate here, it is a soft open feature. This one was actually just recently bed lined, but this thing actually is capable of some pretty serious work. I'll put the specs up there on the screen for the payload and the towing, But when this thing was launched, a lot of people had question because the JL and the JK and any Jeep before it actually didn't have that much capability. They had very little towing, very little payload capacity. And when this thing launched, actually with the hero colors and when they were making all the commercials and everything like that, they actually showed this thing hauling around dirt bikes, maybe you know, a bed rack and a rooftop tent. And honestly, I think that's really going after who would buy this thing. This thing is certainly a lifestyle vehicle. It can take you out on the trail, sure, and I'm sure it can conquer some rocks and some mud, but this thing really is an enabler. It allows you to get camping. It allows you to maybe take your dirt bikes out on a weekend trip. It allows you to go camping with your friends. It allows you to haul your kayaks. It has all the ability to do all of that and still get you down the trail as well. Now, you may have owned a Jeep in the past and found them really, really uncomfortable. This one is not that way. You can see it has digital gauges, has a nice infotainment screen here in the center. This one is outfitted with an automatic transmission, but this is actually one of only two midsize trucks, this one and the Tacoma, to still offer a manual transmission. So really, really appreciative of that. You can see here you have your four-wheel drive selector with your 2 high, 4 high, and low range. So it is a proper off-road vehicle. These can also be outfitted with lockers, with a disconnectable sway bar, or potentially limited slip differentials if you do not have those lockers. But it definitely feels very much like a Jeep in here. You have these really cool climate vents that Jeep has been using since the JK. I really like those. They close up really nice, but they're also really easy to open and angle should you want to do that. It does have cruise control. It does have all of your driver information systems that you may want. But it still is very much a Jeep. It still has these really cool little quirky bits inside. This bar that extends all the way across the dash, I think that has a really great look to it, as well as these door handles. They are plastic, but they have a really nice kind of aluminum look, really high quality actually. You got to remember, here in the mid-size truck game, quality is kind of second. You're definitely paying for kind of the convenience of the truck, definitely, and they are normally a fair amount cheaper than the mid-size counterparts, but this one just has style, it has quality, and actually I'm very, very impressed with the fit and finish of this vehicle. So one thing that the mid-size truck game is not very good at is actually rear legroom and rear passenger comfort. Now we'll go ahead and get into this one, and actually it's not too bad. So I could maybe move my driver's seat back a little bit more to get comfortable, but I'm about 6 foot, 6'1", somewhere in there. I still have several inches between myself and the front driver's seat. Headroom is great with this boxy shape here, very reminiscent of the Jeep JL, a Wrangler, and overall it feels very much like a Wrangler. And I think that's one real positive about this truck. When you go up to the mid-size trucks, they can be really, really scary for someone else to get into. If you've never driven a large truck, it definitely feels like a giant box driving down the road. This one feels a lot more small in kind of the packaging. It feels very much like a Jeep. And if you've ever owned a Jeep in the past, this would be a really easy truck to get into. So setting off here in the 2021 Jeep Gladiator. So one thing you can tell immediately when you sit down in this thing is it is clearly a Jeep. It feels very much like a Jeep. My parents have a JK. I'm very, very familiar with that. And this feels ultimately a lot more similar to that than you might think. Now this is more based on the JL, which is the most updated version of the Wrangler, and I think that is more or less a good thing. It has a lot more creature comforts, a lot more soft touch materials, and overall it feels like a lot more of a civilized place in here. So this Gladiator, like all newer Jeeps, has the 3.6 liter Pentastar V6, and this motor really gets a lot of hate, and I think it's a little bit unwarranted. Now, you hear a lot of people saying that the engine in the Wrangler is nothing more than a minivan motor, and that is partially true. This V6 is certainly the FCA corporate V6, especially in the trucks, Jeeps, even in the Challenger, and there's a lot of different vehicles that have this motor, and again, I'm not really sure that that's a bad thing. It does make a healthy amount of horsepower, just under 300, and it is pretty smooth, and it has proven to be fairly reliable. Now, is this as exciting as what it would be if it was a V8? Absolutely not. I'm sure if Ram would drop either their 5.7 or the 6.4 liter in here, it would be a lot have a lot more get up and go, but I'm sure it would also be a lot more expensive and a lot more thirsty. Now this V6 is paired with the new 8-speed, the ZF 8-speed, and it feels really great here in this truck. We're cruising down the road here at 50 miles an hour. We're turning just over 1500 RPM, and this motor and transmission feels like a really good pairing. Now personally, if this was your only vehicle, I'm not sure that I would go with the Willys trim or the Rubicon or even the Mojave for that matter. I think you know, it is more comfortable than any Jeep in the past. You know, certainly those early Jeeps, the CJ2s, the CJ3, and even the MB, if you want to talk about military use, they felt more like a tractor going down the road. And if you ever got those up to anywhere close to 50 or 60 mile an hour, I'm not sure that you'd be very comfortable doing so. Now, in this one, it is pretty livable. It has power windows, power locks, a really nice screen here in the center, digital gauges, a really more livable vehicle. It's definitely brought up to the current century, let's call it. But I'm not sure I would go for those super off-road dedicated trims if you didn't plan on off-roading on a regular basis. Sure, they look cool, but you're definitely making some sacrifices both with your wallet and ride quality and even fuel economy when you go with those off-road dedicated trims. Here in this one, again, it does have four-wheel drive, it has that low range, and I'm sure that you could get it with that limited slip if you so choose. But I think that would do probably the majority of what everyone needs. If you just want to go out to the lake for the weekend or maybe to your camping spot with some buddies and you know, you want to throw a cooler or maybe a tent in the rear, I think this would do everything that you need it to do, and I think it would do it really well. Is it as comfortable as the other mid-sized trucks? I think it's pretty close. Honestly, I was expecting it with this solid front axle to be a lot more uncomfortable, and with its boxy shape, I was expecting it to kind of buff it around a little bit more in the wind. I don't really feel that nearly as much as what I was expecting. But I think you need to go into this vehicle with kind of a clear view on what it is. Is it a four-door JL basically with a bed tacked on the rear? Yeah, kinda. But if you go into that knowing that and wanting that, I think that's perfectly fine. This is a Jeep. You can take the top off, you can take the doors off, and I think you'll be completely happy with that. But you have to want a Jeep to start with. So is the new Jeep Gladiator a good financial decision? And the answer, I'm sure you all know, is clearly no. You could buy a half-ton or potentially even a 3/4-ton pickup that would have all sorts more truck capability while spending a lot less money. But I don't think this is why you buy a Jeep, and that's certainly not why you buy a Gladiator. You're not buying one of these to tow 30,000 pounds. You're not buying one of these to haul a camper or anything like that. You're buying one of these because it's an extension of you. It has personality. Between Mopar parts and all the different aftermarket accessory manufacturers, you could set one of these up exactly the way you wanted to. Whether that's to take you to the office or to take you out on the trails on the weekends with your friends to go camping, fishing, and whatever else you want to do. I think I personally would be stuck somewhere between a Gladiator and a Tacoma if I was shopping for a new midsize truck here for 2021. Certainly, this has more accessories that you could add to it. It has more trim levels. You could definitely make this exactly the way you wanted it. And while it may be a little bit more expensive than a Tacoma, it definitely has the character. I think a Tacoma might be slightly more reliable in the long term, but it's just not as fun as a Jeep Gladiator. So let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Thank you all very much for watching. Have a fantastic week, everybody. We'll catch you next time.